Stellaris is a game by Paradox, and you know what that means. If you don't play the game for 2 years, then you can come back and find another $250 worth of DLC to buy. Paradox games are like this horrible curse. They advertise themselves as being these incredibly diverse and unique experiences with lots of depth, and you play for a few hundred to a few thousand hours, and then you realize all of your games play the same. Boy 4? I'm not fully up to date on the balance now, but for about, give or take, 6 or 7 years, the game's meta was to spam 20 with infantry and have the enemy endlessly charge into your line and die, and then micro-tank to their VPs. And it's not the strat for Germany. That's the strat for literally every country in the game, from Libya to the Philippines to Greenland. Crusader Kings isn't nearly as bad, as a lot of the game is focused on roleplay and character dynamics, but strip that away and the actual gameplay you're doing is samey eugenics and a lot of holy wars with little difference between cultures. Stellaris, well, you can play incredibly diverse races of individuals, from communist egalitarian snails to my patrons, as perfect as they come, or machines with laser eyes hell-bent on destroying all organic life. Realistically, they all play the exact same. I don't have an inhuman amount of hours in Stellaris because, well, it's so exceptionally samey. Here is how literally every Stellaris run goes, regardless of the ethics or civics that you choose. You send out science ships to auto-explore, click past all the long-ass text pop-ups, and you start gradually building out your territory via building outposts and surveyed systems. This goes on for a while with some empire management in the interim, and you will eventually meet another empire. With the Fermi paradox promptly smartphoned, you will celebrate your new friend in the universe by ignoring them. It doesn't really matter if they're a utopian society or literally the fucking Combine. There's almost nothing to be gained by interacting with them. If you're feeling extra paranoid, you can throw up a starbase at their border. If they do ever declare war, sit on your new fancy starbase with whatever fleet you can be bothered to make at the time, and watch as they suicide into it. You know, this sure reminds me of something. Then you spread to every planet in your borders, you throw down a bunch of tech buildings as they grow, and congratulations, you've won the game. You can try to engage with the new mechanics like casting votes at the Space UN or enlisting Lee Harvey Oswald as a space CIA, but the features have so little effect on the actual game. The most optimal way to play has and always be making an empire that's the best at generating and maintaining a dragon's horde of alloys, and then spamming whatever ship design is currently meta in the patch you're playing on. And yeah, playing the best way isn't always, well, the best way for your enjoyment, but Paradox are now 2 for 2, wait, no, 3 for 3 actually, on making entire DLCs centered around almost nothing except espionage, and having them add literally nothing to the game except busy work. I guess look out, City Skylines 2? These mechanics don't reward you for interacting with them. If you wanted to, say, drive a political wedge between two friendly empires, you better hope the RNG decides who you want to sabotage correctly, because if not, the Space UN is truly hilarious though, because you literally get punished for interacting with it. If you, for some reason, want to pass a specific resolution, it costs the same resource as it takes to claim territory, ergo the most important resource in the game bar alloys or tech. You'll never want to do this for more reasons than just that though. The actual resolution's main reward for passing them is more favor in the Space UN, so you can pass more resolutions. One of Stellaris' most consistent pieces of additional DLC has been new species packs. Even though you can find new species on the workshop, I find these mostly to be okay additions, ignoring the fact that they arbitrarily lock entire gameplay mechanics behind these DLCs for some reason because it's Paradox. Except they made the absolute stupidest decision possible. One of the best traits in the entire game, budding, is locked behind picking a plant-based portrait. Why? Additionally, the Lithoid pack has absolutely, hands down, my favorite portraits in the game. I mean, I wish I looked like this. And, they're the only portraits in the game to lock you into having a specific trait. And that trait? Being a Lithoid reduces your pop growth massively, which is unironically the most important stat in the entire game. Empires pick between 3 things on this political compass. Afterwards, you can pick civics which affect how your empire plays and might have requirements based on ethics or leader style. This seems like a great system, and it is. But the fact that you need to look for civics that completely change how the game plays to shake it up is kind of baffling. And even then, there are only very few which genuinely change the game up enough to be noticeable, and those tend to only be the ones which limit your diplomatic options, which is literally taking away more of the game for variety. Why is this a problem? Well, choosing your ideology should probably change enough of the game to be noticeable on its own, but they only give stat percent changes. And rooting through the horribly designed, unsortable civic list induces actual physical pain. Modded civics don't really tend to fix this in my experience either, because they're simply not capable of changing enough about the core experience to be dramatically different from every other empire in existence. There's not really enough ideological conflict in a game that's about that at its core. Sure, spiritualists hate robots for some reason, but apart from that, playing like a pacifist empire should completely change how the game plays and instead force you to handle conflict in some way that's not spamming battleships. Except, oh, wait, no, that's actually literally your only way of engaging with other empires in a meaningful way. Playing a pacifist still makes you play the exact same, you just sit around frothing at the mouth for someone to war deck on you so you can go and eat them. And even with high AI aggressiveness, it still takes ages to happen, if at all. In all the games I played for this video, I had AI empires war deck on me a grand total of 2 times. Both times, I proceeded to wipe the floor with them and then use my ill-gotten gains to steamroll the rest of the game. This is pretty much how every single game plays out, and that's entirely regardless of ethics or civics. A higher difficulty doesn't really fix things because all it does is make the AI cheat really hard, which forces you to cheese, and then you end up in an XCOM 2 alpha striking difficulty feedback loop, which I'm not gonna explain because I've brought it up in like 5 videos at this point. As far as I remember, it's basically been like this since time immemorial, and that might lead you to believe that Stellaris doesn't get changes, except it does. A lot of them. This Chapel comic sums it up nicely. Stellaris 1.0 is almost unrecognizable to the game we have today, and in my opinion, it's been a great improvement, even if it is still deeply flawed at its core. I think the Stellaris of today could definitely take some lessons from the Stellaris of yesteryear, though, and I'm not just saying that as like old game good, new game bad. Your sphere of influence is now also centered around starbases built in systems, which I will admit is far better than how it used to work, where your borders slowly grew out of planets. But Stellaris is so lacking in asymmetrical gameplay that some Civic where you play as like literal trees or something gradually growing out their roots from planets, and that could definitely use something like a system of the old. And it'd be a fun alternative to microing construction ships and influence expenditure. Some of the most fun empires to play in 4Xs are the ones which eschew a resource or gameplay mechanic in return for something else. Stellaris' Gestalt empires already do this, completely sidestepping the need for consumer goods in return for being hated by everyone in the galaxy, and not being able to integrate with other empires, and having a pop growth debuff, and Jesus Christ, does Paradox hate robots that much? Example, endless space. Necrophages can't use diplomacy, Broken Lords don't use food, the cult only gets one city, and the roving clans can't declare war. Stellaris kind of have these, with the equivalents being a devouring swarm, lithoids are robots, Enrico Dandolo, and pacifists. Except in Endless Legend, you get an entire faction with lore, cool aesthetics, fun faction gimmicks, and units that are actually meant for their faction and made by a game designer. In Stellaris, you get percentage buffs. Go make your own lore. Wow. I am so engaged right now. As the game hands the sticks to you when it comes to creation, clearly the answer is, okay, don't min-max and instead roleplay. And yes, fair enough. But Stellaris does not really encourage this at all. There are only like 24 origins for every single species ever conceivable, with some of them being total copies of each other. And the amount of things that you can actually change about your empire and citizens is how they look, what percentage modifiers they get, and if they have some mechanics turned off. Apart from the new, extremely scripted origins where you rebel against Mega Walmart, that is literally it, without any exaggeration. The in-game roleplay options are very, very limited too, with it boiling down to deciding who your besties are and who you want to obliterate. It's honestly remarkable that I can play this game for almost 2 full weeks, play 3.5 full games, and come out the other end with so little to say. Also, I'd just like to add really quickly that I think Stellaris has kind of managed to use its whole, like, haha, funny genocide the Xenos bit as a way to, like, shield itself from harsher criticisms. Anytime I see this game being discussed, it's always focused on, you know, that, and not the fact that every game blurs into the exact same mess. Don't even think about playing this game unless it's on sale. Though, I've heard rumors that there are other methods of obtaining the game, such as cutting up your optic fiber line, eating that raw fiber as it comes through, and then throwing up on your hard drive. Thanks to all my patrons. You're all quite wonderful people. Love you all, and good night.